Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I am a good guy. But with that said, I just plain adore the bad guys. It stands apart from the pack as something truly special.
Obviously, the animation is the first thing anyone notices, and it is amazing. In a landscape of CGI movies that all want to look like Pixar, the bad guys went for something a little different. It's still 3D, but it has a lot of 2D elements to it, from details on the character models to environmental elements, and they combine smoothly to make a very appealing aesthetic. Even the way the characters move has a speed, rhythm, and snappiness to it that one usually finds only in 2D animation. The style also combines elements from different sources. One minute it can look like a zany cartoon short from the 40s, and the next it has elements of a 90s action anime, and they all fit together. Then you have the expressions. Sure, we get some great exaggerated faces throughout, but even the subdued expressions are masterfully done. These characters can convey so much without even needing to speak, from smug satisfaction to deeply rooted concern, and it really draws you in. Not to mention the creativity on display with how these characters move, gesticulate, and interact with the world, as well as some great visual gags. Snake shedding his disguise along with his skin is a great example, as well as Tarantula having multiple keyboards to operate with her multiple legs.
But then, of course, you have the fact that this is a genuinely exciting and engaging movie.
The fact that The Bad Guys is a family-friendly flick about funny animals doesn't preclude it from being a stylish heist thriller on the same level as something like Ocean's 11 or The Sting. From the handling of each new plot twist to the chemistry between the characters, the movie is a masterclass of good storytelling. It even had me on the edge of my seat a couple of times.
Also, Diane Foxington is smoking hot. Well, her design is certainly... Wait, what? Come on, Snazzy, let's not make this weird. Who's being weird? I'm not human. I'm allowed to think the Anthro Fox is pretty. It would be weird if you agreed with me. Okay, I'm just gonna get this video back on track if you don't mind.
Anyway, what really makes The Bad Guys special is its ability to handle its central theme. That theme is a familiar one, as it's a favorite topic of many contemporary stories, but it's handled with more tact and nuance than most live-action flicks can manage, and it is this that we shall be examining for the rest of the video.
Spoilers lie ahead, so if you haven't seen The Bad Guys yet, you owe it to yourself to check it out. Otherwise, we're gonna dive right in.
Okay, so the underlying theme of The Bad Guys is an examination of prejudice. To convey this, we follow a band of anthropomorphic animals: a wolf, a snake, a tarantula, a shark, and a piranha.
For our convenience, those are also their names.
Each of these animals has a bad reputation, being viewed as dangerous, creepy, or just flat-out evil. Since they are viewed this way, they've taken a page from Richard III and are determined to prove the villains, roles that they play to the hilt.
I have to pause here and say that I think this allegory is applied much better in The Bad Guys than it is in Disney's Zootopia. You see, Zootopia is set in a world peopled entirely by anthropomorphic animals, and it applies the Prejudice allegory to the tensions between predator animals and prey animals. The thing is, though, that the prey animals have every right to be worried about predators because, well, they're predators. They are actively dangerous to the prey.
In The Bad Guys, on the other hand, the characters are anthropomorphic animals in a world of humans, and it is thus humans who fear them. This makes total sense when you think about it, since the human perception of the animals in question is largely overblown. Sure, each of these species are dangerous in their own way, but the threat they pose to humans is almost nil.
You've no doubt heard it said that more people are killed each year by hippopotami than by sharks. Yet sharks have their own subcategory in the horror genre, while hippos are the subject of a popular children's game. Well, something similar can be applied to the characters in question here. They have bad reputations based on their species, even though their species aren't that bad in real life.
Right off the bat, then, we have a strong foundation for the Prejudice allegory, since these guys are perceived as villains even without having to be villains.
The use of animals also makes the allegory universal. Let's face it, every type of person in the world has had a negative stereotype applied to them by every other type of person in the world, especially in this day and age of identity politics.
As such, by using animals in place of people for the discriminated classes, The Bad Guys makes it so the human audience can potentially relate to all the characters regardless of their societal type.
We can all see ourselves as any one of these guys, or maybe even all of them. Earlier, though, I did say that this movie handles its themes with more nuance than most live-action adult movies do. What do I mean by that? Let's go a bit deeper.
As established, the bad guys are villains. As Wolf puts it, this is because the world has already labeled them as villains anyway, so they might as well embrace their reputations. Now, on the one hand, this is clear discrimination. Society fears each character based entirely on what they are, and this is portrayed as a negative thing. If we were talking about humans, it would be outright racism.
That being said, though, just because society is wrong does not mean the bad guys are right. Wolf's claim that they are being villains because that's the role assigned to them is a rationalization, not a justification. They might be pigeonholed, but no one is actually forcing them to be villains. As proof of this, let's look at the other two animal characters who enter the story.
The first stereotype voiced in this movie is not about the bad guys, but is rather spoken by one of them. In the very first scene, Snake tells Wolf that he enjoys eating guinea pigs because they embody goodness. According to him, there is nothing purer and more wholesome than these little potato-shaped rodents. Later, we meet Professor Marmalade, an anthropomorphic guinea pig who is widely considered the world's most kind-hearted philanthropist, and it is he who offers to reform the bad guys. After all, if anyone can do it, surely a pure-hearted guinea pig can. However, the big twist is that Marmalade is not what he seems. He is in fact a Machiavellian scumbag who has manipulated the bad guys from the beginning so they could take the fall for his own grand heist. We never do learn his backstory, but one thing is clear. Marmalade was not born pure and good, nor is that his default nature. He's arguably worse than the bad guys ever were.
To contrast Professor Marmalade, we have Diane Foxington.
When we meet Diane, she's the newly elected governor of California, but she also has a secret. Before her political career, she was the Crimson Paw, the world's greatest and most notorious career thief. Heck, she was so good that she was once on the verge of pulling off a heist long considered impossible. Yet in that moment of her greatest triumph, she did some self-reflecting and realized what she had become.
Being a fox, she was also subject to stereotyping. She was seen as tricky and sneaky, and by extension, untrustworthy.
By being a thief, even though she was good at it, all she had done was affirm what people had always said about her. Without even realizing it, she had believed and embraced the words that hurt her. So in the midst of her crowning achievement as a villain, she made a choice to be better.
She does meet the stereotype of being a vixen, but I'm not complaining. Okay, seriously, what is with you being such a horn dog today? Well, I haven't gotten out in a while, Omni. You know how it is. All too well. Maybe if dating were easier in this day and age, we both could... Stop distracting me, will you? Okay, sheesh. Anyway, here we see two people who run directly counter to the bad guy's worldview.
Marmalade exploits a positive stereotype to his own selfish ends, letting the world think he's good when he's actually evil. Diane, meanwhile, caught herself playing to the negative stereotype, then chose to defy it and use her skills to become a positive force in the world.
In both cases, what they are does not define who they are, contrary to what the bad guys have believed their entire lives.
Wolf might have tried to frame it like he and his crew are victims of circumstance, but at the end of the day, they all still chose to be villains, and they have to own up to that at the end. Their race is not an excuse for their behavior because they never gave anyone a reason to not fear them, which is a message that this movie's contemporaries rarely acknowledge.
Other stories like this never miss an opportunity to play the victim card as a way of avoiding responsibility, but the bad guys puts the onus back on the protagonists. If they chose to be bad, they can also choose to be good, but if they really have changed at the end, they have to accept the consequences for their actions, or else it's not sincere. Speaking of sincerity, that's another layer worth exploring.
A lot of recent superhero comics have gradually shifted various villains into the roles of heroes, and the reason given is because the writers think good is boring. They say that Superman is too much of a goody two-shoes for them to write about, but they relate to the psychotic murderer Harley Quinn. Meanwhile, other stories have emerged in which the heroes are depicted as hypocritical bullies on a good day and vile fascists on the worst day.
Ironic, isn't it? A genre built on the idea of good against evil now seems to think that good doesn't even exist. Or if it does, it's boring. It's a tragic sight to behold, pal. Leave it to a movie called The Bad Guys to expose this trend as the garbage it is.
It's apparent even before we learn the truth about him that Marmalade's version of goodness doesn't feel very authentic. He just seems too saccharine, and his methods of teaching goodness to the bad guys are superficial. It is good to help Granny cross the street, to share food, to save a cat from a tree, and to wear cutesy, non-threatening costumes. Obviously, these don't do anything because they have no context to them. They're just stereotypical ideas of goodness, and if they have any effect at all, it's to alter the bad guys into being pathetic and harmless.
Whenever our heroes do something that is genuinely good that gets them one step closer to reformation, it is not forced, nor does it happen in a vacuum. These are natural acts that occur without prompting.
When Wolf successfully saves the cat from the tree, he doesn't just climb up and grab it. He forms a connection with it, letting it know that he won't cause any harm. When Snake gives Shark a push-pop to calm him down, he does so without even thinking. He just wants to provide some solace for his friend. These examples of goodness are authentic. Diane once again reinforces the truth of the matter. She decided on her own to turn over a new leaf and be a better person.
Did she have to make sacrifices? Well, obviously she can't be a thief anymore, instead settling for being a politician, which is like being a thief, but you get a nicer office. Okay, joking aside, she did have to put that life behind her, but she never stopped being herself. As she puts it,
I'm still me. I'm just me on the right side.
Hence, her form of goodness is also authentic, and it's why she genuinely roots for the bad guys to clean up their act. She knows it can be done, it just turns out she had to be the one who showed them how to do it. And I'm sure you'll also notice that neither Diane nor the bad guys have to compromise their cool factor when they turn good. Turns out, being good is actually cool in its own right.
With that being said, I suppose it's worth noting that the movie's morality is just a wee bit gray as opposed to being strictly black and white.
While everyone is working against Marmalade at the end, the methods with which they oppose him are still dubious. There's deception, breaking and entering, computer hacking, speeding, destruction of property, and of course theft. But since all of this is done in the name of stopping the actual villain, the ends justify the means as far as this movie is concerned.
Perhaps that's another thread worth tugging on, but this video's already long enough, and I'm sure some other philosopher can do a better job exploring it than I can.
The ultimate point is that The Bad Guys has a more nuanced message than just saying prejudice is bad, so don't be prejudiced. It also says that if you are the one facing discrimination, you have a choice of how to respond. You can either embrace the worst version of yourself, thereby proving the bigot's right, or you can step up and be the best version.
That second step won't be easy, but it will be worth it in the long run. So choose wisely, my friends. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. So, foxes, huh? Anthropomorphic foxes specifically. I'm not a freak. Okay, point taken, but why do you like anthro-foxes? I don't know, why do you have a thing for Asian chicks? Sometimes you just like what you like. Well, I guess there's no arguing with that.